can you talk about the difficulties in accusing Russia of these war crimes and classifying them as crimes indeed?
Yes. So thank you for having me. So you're correct. The crime of aggression, while the International Criminal Court has jurisdiction over that crime, it doesn't apply here because it only applies when there are two state parties involved. Russia's not a state party. Actually, Ukraine's not a state party either. It has given jurisdiction for other crimes, but the crime of aggression is not in play in this investigation. And we can talk about that more later because there may be other ways to approach that. The court has jurisdiction over war crimes and crimes against humanity, and they're moving very quickly to investigate those crimes. They've announced that the investigation has started. They have a team on the ground in the region that is already collecting evidence.
And Alex, we were just speaking to one of our guests who's actually in Kyiv, who said they're gathering evidence. Can you just detail, though, the importance of how quickly this is moving and why it's so critical for a war crimes investigation to be leveled against Russia while the war is still going on, as opposed to waiting?
Right. So it's really important to the point you just made to collect the evidence quickly because it's fresh, it's on the ground, and I think that the two main kinds of crimes that the ICC will be looking at are targeting crimes, illegally targeting civilians or using disproportionate force, and also possibly the crime of starvation. If cities are cut off from vital supplies and people are literally starved, that is also a war crime. But to get the evidence of that, those are pretty technical and complicated crimes to prove. You need to have evidence on the ground. And so what your prior guest said about the government officials, but also civilians, civil society, collecting evidence, getting, for example, video evidence, photographs. There's even intercepted conversations that are being collected. There's a huge amount of information, evidence that is pouring out of Ukraine at this time. It's important to capture it right away so that the court could possibly bring charges quickly, not against senior leadership to begin with, but maybe against some of the military commanders on the ground.
I want us to take a listen here to some sound here from President Zelensky in Ukraine about the bombing of the aerial bombing of the maternity hospital.
Авіабомба на пологовий будинок.
An aerial bomb on a maternity hospital is the conclusive evidence that what is happening is a genocide of Ukrainians. Europeans, you won't be able to say that you didn't see what happened to Ukrainians in Mariupol. You saw, you know. Consequently, you must strengthen sanctions against Russia so that it never has the chance to continue this genocide. You need to pressure Russia so that it sits at the negotiating table and ends this barbarous war.
Now, Alex, even if the ICC does conclude that there are crimes and they go through this process, the world has already started to exhibit a fair degree of sanctions. I mean, how does the world, the US, the UK, the EU, keep Russia accountable after the fact?
This process of bringing charges, war crimes, crimes against humanity charges, it's an ongoing process. So you might first target commanders on the ground, and then you work your way up to senior leaders, including to Putin. And I think it's important to do that now and to continue it for three reasons. First of all, it sends a signal, a message to the victims that they are seen, they are valued, and there's action based on the crimes that have been committed against them. Secondly, these charges help to marginalize the actors in Russia. It's in addition to the sanctions, but it's a kind of worldwide condemnation and it's threat of criminal sanction. And then the third thing is the arm of justice is long, and it may be months, maybe even years, sometimes even decades before the leaders who commit these crimes face justice. But it happens more often than you would think, and always to the surprise of the leader who committed the crimes. And so we can hope for one day in the future that some of the perpetrators are sitting here in this city, in The Hague, in the dock.
Well, and Alex, I think it's important to know it's one thing to charge, it's another thing to convict. And if we take a look at, someone like Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, there have been mounting evidence that he had committed war crimes, but there's still no conviction for him. So is there Is there any sort of hope, I guess, that, Putin would actually be convicted, or are we, as you said, years off from any actual, specific punishment?
So the Assad case in Syria is a different case because there is no international court that has jurisdiction. The International Criminal Court does not have jurisdiction over Syria, so they have not been able to proceed with investigations. Here, because Ukraine granted jurisdiction to the court in 2015, they do have an jurisdiction, and so they can proceed. Criminal charges of these nature, the war crimes charges, especially targeting civilian cases, are hard cases. Those are hard cases to prove, and proving a crime, you have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. So it does take time, but the continuing to have this pressure, to have the investigation, to have the mounting charges, to have more and more people charged, that, in my view, keeps attention on the crimes and puts continued pressure on the perpetrators.
Hey, thanks for watching Bloomberg Quicktake Now. Subscribe to our channel to see the biggest stories the moment they happen from around the world. And tune in to our 24/7 live stream for global news coverage, documentaries, interviews, deep dives, and shows on the stories that you care most about.